Hi, I'm Annabel.
And I'm Mandy.
And welcome to the Collaborate Southwest podcast.
We believe in the ethos of a rising tide lifts all boats. For each episode, we'll be bringing you conversations and insights from the people behind the brightest ideas and innovations from across the Southwest, whatever business or sector that may be.
As well as a few curveballs to make you smile and lift your day.
Join us over the coming weeks.
And please, if you like us, do leave us a 5-star review to let us know we're going in the right direction. Enjoy! Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're joined by Peter Evans, former enterprise editor for the Sunday Times. Welcome, Peter. We're delighted that you could join us today. So we're going to be talking about your previous role and how collaboration played a part in that. But first, would you like to share a bit about that and your career path to date?
Hi, and thanks for having me. So that I had that job for about 5 years, 5.5 years at the Sunday Times, and the job was mainly talking to entrepreneurs, business owners, and investors about all their great projects and plans, and sort of communicating that to a Sunday Times audience, which is obviously a sort of very mainstream, reasonably educated newspaper audience that was increasingly migrating online. It was fun because the typical reader of the Sunday Times would be sort of older, middle class. Probably, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about class, but you know what I mean. Sort of older, reasonably well off, but with not too much knowledge of the world of tech and startups and that sort of world. So a lot of it was translating what was not particularly complicated but reasonably complicated ideas and initiatives into language that sort of a mainstream audience could understand. So I got to go all over the country, all over Europe, sort of meeting people and companies, which was really exciting, and actually in a world that was often dominated by miserable news, from sort of Brexit through to COVID through to everything else. It was often seen as a sort of an element of positivity in the news cycle. So that was good for my mental health, I guess, as much as anything. Yes, I did that for five or so years. Before that, I was at the Wall Street Journal, mainly in London, doing a sort of more conventional business journalism role. So I was about 4 years there. Before that, I was at university in London, and before that, I grew up in Plymouth. So right. In reverse, that's what I've done.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I was just smiling away when you were describing the audience of the Sunday Times, because my partner Jerry is an avid reader of the Sunday Times, and you just described him exactly.
Yeah. I'm not on staff anymore, so I've got more free rein to say what I want. But yeah, hopefully.
Older middle class with not a lot of knowledge of tech. That's about perfect.
Is that about fair? Yeah.
Well, that's good that you knew your demographic for sure. That you nailed it. That's brilliant. So, as part of this series, we are talking to people from across the region. And as you've just touched on, you've recently relocated to the southwest from London. Obviously, your roots were here originally. What was the drawback to this part of the country? And have you found any geographical barriers in carrying on in your projects currently?
I always plan to come back. My wife is also from Devon, so we always at some stage plan to get back here. What the push factor was coronavirus. We still have for the time being a very, very tiny 1-bed flat in London, and it was miserable, sort of being cooped up there for months on end, and that sort of spurred us into action. I think it would have happened within a year or so anyway, but that was the push. I think there were quite a lot of other people sort of experiencing similar circumstances. So there was always that push, and the pull I think is quite clear. It's a great place to be for lifestyle, but increasingly, and this is crucial because I don't think I'd have done it if there wasn't a sort of realistic career to be had here for however many years I've got left in the workforce. Hopefully, but sadly, that's probably about 50. But not fair. That's not fair. But you know what I mean. Like,
it's a long time ahead.
Yeah, I wouldn't have made that jump if I didn't think there were opportunities here, and I think increasingly there are. Obviously, the past 6 months or so have disrupted progress, but that's the same everywhere. But certainly compared, so I would have left 15 or 16 years ago, and compared to the atmosphere then, I just feel now there's a lot more. I know we're talking about collaboration, but there's a lot more sort of collaboration is the word, but a lot more joined up thinking across the region. A lot more people talking to each other about projects, and that has always been, I think, what the Southwest has struggled with. People see it as a beautiful place, lovely beaches, whatever, cliches, but it's struggled for a uniform identity, and because of that, there's not been those cross-region projects that you would get in Birmingham, in the north, wherever, which have these sort of identities, for better or worse.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was that? I can't remember the second part of the question.
Oh, just about the. Did you find any geographical barriers? I mean, obviously we've
not yet. Yeah, not yet. I think that the test will be next year as the world opens up again. Fingers crossed. But no, and even for the journalists, I'm still writing, and I think it's seen as a positive that there are people with proper national newspaper, national media outlet experience now operating regionally, because it's been for years the sort of the way things are done is you write from your sort of ivory tower in London, pontificating on things you know very little about, and you're seeing a proliferation of sort of northern correspondents being appointed, or people writing from the Midlands or the Southwest, which is a good thing, and sort of fits in with the levelling up agenda we were hearing so much about last year. So not yet, but I guess as we kick back into something like normality, those barriers might become more apparent. But
okay, thank you. Mandy, you wanted to ask a question.
Well, I really was just want to echo. It's like I grew up in Cornwall, and I left a long time before you, 40 years ago, for the 30 years ago, for the same reason. It's like there wasn't the career infrastructure then at all, but what you said about now, there's a real pull to come back. That will absolutely be music to Kareem's ears. We were interviewing him last week, and he was explaining, the years of work they've been putting in to make the Southwest now an attractive place. So you've got the push and the pull.
I think the lifestyle will always be a massive sort of factor for anyone coming here, but it becomes and you talk to employers, and the last thing they want is someone coming out of London or wherever and checking out and thinking that's me done, I can just get a job and put in minimum time without any sort of connection or passion for the job. What they need, what the region needs, is people who want to come out in the sort of prime of their career and then carry it on, rather than
absolutely Kareem talks very much about building places for people. So it's not just about the fact that you can sit in your house in Devon or Cornwall or wherever you are and work outside of that towards London or the north or wherever. It's actually building places for people to want to stay and bring up their families and have careers to build.
And that is definitely happening more. Which is exciting to see. There's lots of different centres across the region. fingers crossed. You need people with vision who are like Kareem, I'm sure, and others who can articulate that and make it happen in reality. That one of my long-standing gripes with the Southwest is lots of talk and not so much action. I think there's been so many projects to sort of bring about a sort of Northern Powerhouse equivalent, and whether it's sort of squabbling or not the right council leaders or whatever it is, or politicians not making good on promises, it never really happens, which leads to some people feeling sorry for themselves, which doesn't help anyone. But yeah, but I don't want to be negative at all, because it feels exciting and it feels like
absolutely. I think
momentum's building.
Absolutely, and I think that what's happening more so now is the council leaders are far more commercially aware and pushing for cross collaboration between commercial and public sectors. So that's really encouraging, because previously it had been very silo. The council sat over here, public sector organisations sat in their own silos, and I think there's a lot more of commercial business and public sector working together, which is what drives change and raises people up across the region, essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So obviously we talked about in your previous role at the Sunday Times, and you talked to startups and entrepreneurs and tech companies, which I'm sure you spoke to lots of people about interesting stories, but what's the biggest story that you've worked on?
I was thinking about this before coming on. The biggest in terms of impact on the world in 10 years of journalism is definitely coronavirus, just because of how that's changed every part of life, and business has adapted or died, and we're only beginning to see the sort of economic fallout. I remember covering the Scottish referendum in 2014 and thinking, wow, this is massive. It won't get much bigger. Yeah, exactly. It won't get much bigger than this. And then we had Brexit, and then we had whatever, Trump, and not like Trump, and it just kept coming. So yeah, but in terms of the stories that gave me the most pleasure were when I'd interview or profile an entrepreneur who was on the up and up, and you hear about their story and their plans, and then 2 years later maybe they've exploded. They're sort of changing the world. I'm trying to think of an example. I interviewed the founder of Brewdog, the beer, about 6 years ago, and they were becoming well known. They were doing all these crazy stunts, but weren't ubiquitous like they are now. And now you look at them, and everyone drinks it. Like my dad, who's a retired accountant, drinks Brewdog, which is which says
they managed to cross all the demographics, haven't they?
Exactly.
Breaking the boundaries of the demographic.
Yeah. So, and tells me how much better it is than normal beer. So I'm just as a sort of as an example of.
Well, they're opening up in Exeter as well.
Yeah, it's great. So yeah, they were the ones that sort of individual stories. People with grand plans, and you often hear their plans and you think, you're crazy, that'll never happen, and then
they turn it into a reality. Fantastic.
I tell you, it's kind of odd to think that actually we are really living through history in our time. Like sometimes you open the newspaper and you're like, my God, in 20 years time, people are going to be looking back at this time, and it will be like history. And there are so many cliches that are already, you just said it, adapt or die, and you've got to accelerate.
World, new normal,
and all these cliches that you hear are happening right now, and I think it's equally exciting as it is crazy and terrifying. If we get more companies emerging like Brewdog, then
the sort of reason to be cheerful for all that is historically a lot of the greatest companies ever created were founded in in a recession. All the fintechs that are now sort of part of everyday life, Monzo, Revolut, all those lot were founded after the financial crisis because people were fed up with traditional banks, and now they're worth sort of £1 billion. And so almost certainly at the moment, someone somewhere is already on the way to creating something that in 5-10 years time will all be using sort of day to day, which is great to think about, but in the moment doesn't really sort of stop us being miserable about lockdown. But the world is incredibly resilient as a business people.
Absolutely. Journalists are often seen as working on stories in isolation. Do you think that's true, or do you have to collaborate? Does that play a part in your work?
Well, you definitely do. Now I'm doing some consultancy with a couple of companies, and you realise the extent to which collaboration is essential every minute of time you spend with them. With journalism, it's when you're talking to contacts, particularly ones who shouldn't be speaking to journalists, so they're telling you something that someone else doesn't want you to know about. It's collaboration in the sense that you need them to trust you, and you need to form that relationship very quickly, and hopefully they believe what you're doing is worthy of their time and them disclosing that information. So that is a sort of bond of trust you forge very quickly. But more widely, sort of the way that a lot of it works is there are press officers and sort of senior executives at companies that you form relationships with, you collaborate with, and I mean, a lot of the time they don't have to speak to you. They might get some profile from being in the Sunday Times, but that's Monday's chip wrapping or whatever the phrase is. So unless you collaborate, unless you offer them something in return, unless you sort of form a long-term relationship, then those sort of things don't happen, and you don't get the stories, and you don't do your job. So while the actual process of producing the story is quite a singular activity, all the work you do to get there is incredibly collaborative. And the other part of that is if you're working in a newspaper, then you're part of a team, and you're every week there's a blank page and websites to be filled, and unless you work as a team and collaborate, then that doesn't happen. So a bit of both, but ultimately you're there on the page, it's your name, and you're responsible for that. So it's quite a weird profession in that way.
But that baseline, that whole baseline of trust, in order to build collaboration and collaborative partnerships fast, that theme, it doesn't matter whether we've talked to a newspaper journalist or a public sector or private sector, that seems to be the absolute common thread that people are saying is key.
And hard won and very easily lost.
Absolutely. And that's internal as well, I guess, because there must have been competition for stories, were there, or were you sort of very much?
No, it's vicious. It could get vicious. Playing politics was one way of doing it, or just it's a tightrope sometimes.
I can imagine. Sometimes you fall off, sometimes you stay on.
Good fun though.
Well, it keeps the adrenaline pumping for sure. Carrying on with that theme then, what sort of the principles of collaboration for you? Do you feel you want to work with like-minded people or people with different perspectives? What do you think are the main principles for collaboration?
It's interesting because if it's a project or something long-term, then I think it's essential to have diversity of thoughts, diversity of background, diversity of everything you can, because otherwise, as the world has proved over and over again, you're doomed to repeat the same mistake that sort of middle-aged white people have repeated again, and sort of Sunday Times
Yeah.
readers have repeated again and again. So yeah, you need people from diverse backgrounds, but more so able to think differently. I've read quite a bit on neurodiversity and how important that is, because if everyone's thinking the same, then if the input is the same, then the output will almost always be the same. But beyond that, you need people of all ages and levels of experience willing to challenge authority, because there'll be natural leaders, there'll be natural followers, but I've always found the most successful teams, the most successful collaborations have had people willing to challenge that, even if it's a long way down the line. People who are happy to say, hang on, this doesn't make sense, we need to start again, or we need to go back a bit. And it gets really dangerous if you don't have that. If you don't have people willing to speak out. So yeah. But it goes back to what Mandy was saying on trust is the absolute sort of centerpiece of this all, and whether you build that quickly or that's a long-term relationship, I think that's the bedrock of everything. But I mean, I wouldn't dismiss like-minded people because
I think you have to have a common purpose, don't you? And you're like-minded in that way, but you don't have to agree on everything, and you can come from different strengths, different backgrounds, different opinions. But if you're all traveling in the same direction and wanting to achieve the same goals, then that can be the like-minded piece.
Yeah, and I guess values are connected to that. If you share values, then you can disagree within that framework. Yeah, it's fascinating.
And that aspect of challenge that you mentioned, if trust is one corner underpinning collaboration, then the ability to be able to challenge in a safe environment is probably a second pillar. I liked what you said. If the input is the same, then the output's going to be the same.
But actually, I'm interested across the Southwest, because as a region, perhaps we're not as diverse as some others, and I know lots of business leaders are thinking about that as a challenge. How do we increase the diversity of the workforce? Not sure how you do that, but perhaps that's another podcast.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's a bigger question, isn't it?
Can't do that in 5 minutes.
No, unfortunately not. So obviously we've touched on tech slightly, in terms of that was part of your remit, was to talk to entrepreneurs and tech companies. Have you seen or written about any companies now that are bursting onto the scene that are competitors to like the likes of Zoom or Teams, or we've got people that we need to watch out for or look out for?
I thought on Zoom and Teams and all that, what's interesting is people have assumed they are now a permanent fixture of life, and they will be to a certain extent. But you saw, whenever it was earlier this week, the news of the vaccine, and the share price of Zoom absolutely
plummeted, didn't it? Yeah.
Which suggests,
and all the rest of the markets rose, didn't it? And then Zoom dropped.
Which suggests otherwise. So while it's sort of made its way into our lives, Zoom and others, they won't be absolutely pivotal like they are now. I'm just trying to think of an answer to your question. I'm not as on top of it as I was 3 months ago. I think we're only seeing the beginning of using voice as a tool to direct everything. So on the go, I know we all use or could use Siri or Alexa or anything like that, but it's still relatively nascent, that technology. But within the next sort of 10, 20 years using voice to command everything from typing to
Yeah.
banking to shopping to in a sort of seamless way will pervade life. And I guess if I knew who was going to win that race,
You'd be a very rich person, wouldn't
yeah, I don't think I'd be talking to you.
Investing your money in those shares for sure.
I'd be in the Bahamas or something like that. But,
Bahamas over Devon, seriously?
yeah, maybe in November.
But is that whole the most dangerous place to be is standing still, and the companies that think that they've made it or they're here to stay, we've all seen them knocked off the pillar time again.
And whatever that stat is about the biggest companies in America 20 years ago being sort of Ford, General Motors, companies like that, and now it's all the big tech companies.
Yeah. Well, it's like, don't be a blockbuster, right? It's like...
exactly.
Or a Betamax video.
Yeah. My uncle bought both because he wasn't sure which way it was going to go.
There was a rival to the CD, wasn't there?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes, there was.
Like a few people would have them.
No, I can't remember. I know what you. Yeah,
weird, like square contraption.
Yeah.
It'll come back to me.
Yeah. Oh, crikey. Walkmans.
At this point, we've entirely lost our younger audience.
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah.
They definitely.
We better be sure of our demographic.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we're okay. I think our demographic will remember.
Love it.
So going away from tech and more towards more sort of tangible things, we've started a book club within the group. So, which is we were one of the members that actually asked if he could create that channel. We're like, of course, absolutely fine. And it's really proved popular. People are loving reading and learning. And so I just wondered if you had a business book that you could recommend to us.
The one I read most recently, which was brilliant, was called Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, who is the founder of Nike, whatever you want to say. It's quite a short book, unlike some business books which tend to go on, and it's brilliantly written. And tells the story of how this guy, he was a sort of mid-ranking runner in America, sort of almost national level, but not quite, went on to found Nike, which was the first sort of mass production trainer company in America, and took advantage of the sort of boom of recreational exercise. But it's just a brilliantly told story, and obviously you can't really argue with that success.
You can't really, no. We'll pass that on. We'll put that in the channel, and I'm sure that will be well received.
The other all-time classic is one called Barbarians at the Gate, which is about a sort of hostile takeover in the 80s. But that's one of my favorite books.
Okay. You don't know who
modeled on anyone in real life, or?
It's got some trumpet.
It's
a real life story.
Okay.
Okay, it's by two Wall Street Journal journalists. I can't remember their names, I'm afraid.
Okay, no, well, we can find it. It's not a problem.
They made it into a film with someone famous. Sorry, not helping.
Yeah.
You sound like my description of things.
It was with someone, and it was a film.
It was really good. Yeah, excellent.
Well, the book is Brian Burrough and John Hillier.
That's it. Yeah.
And it starred James Garner and Jonathan Pryce, the film, just so anyone who wants to get that book and watch that movie. And now the most important questions we're coming to now. Clearly, what we always throw in a couple of questions that are nothing to do with anyone's job or anything, but on the theme of collaboration. What's your favourite musical? Duo, collaboration, group?
So I wasn't clear I feel really on the spot, even though I had these questions, some of these questions. So, by collaboration, you meant a duo. See, that's
well, not necessarily. I suppose it could be somebody. To give you an example, somebody. I can't remember who it was now. Mandy might remember. Was Feed the World by Band Aid, because that's obviously a collaboration. That was their favourite.
So I'm taking this far too seriously.
You really are.
Yeah.
We've had the travelling Wilburys thrown in
good,
there
strong.
along the way. Yeah.
I'll go with my mind's gone back. Who did Islands in the Stream? Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers. Yeah, I'll do that.
Rogers.
There we are.
Me and my friends do that at karaoke, and I'm always Kenny. You worry me. So okay. I love that song.
There's the Island Discs. Here we come.
And the last, but very, very much not least, the most important question of all: what is your favourite cheese?
All cheese, all proper cheese, not Premier or plastic cheese like that. But my ultimate favourite is Santagur, which I just adore. Any blue cheese is great.
Any blue cheese, lovely.
Yeah, as a former journalist for the Sunday Times, once again, you know your audience very well. Has it sat in the fridge right now?
Yeah, I've got some as well.
I've got a nice Wensleydale. Does that count?
It's all good.
Oh, thank you, Peter. It's been fantastic talking to you. Really appreciate it. And we look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks for listening.
We really hope you enjoyed, and if you've got any insights or you'd like us to feature you in a future episode,
please do get in touch.
Oh, and don't forget the 5 stars if you liked us.
Bye!